Our scripture reading this morning is taken from two different places, one in the Old Testament and one in the New Testament. And the sermon is a topical sermon. It's not expository. And Proverbs has a great deal to say about the tongue, our words, what we do with what we say. And I will be sharing several of those with you in the sermon itself. And in James, I think is a very powerful statement about the negative impact of words, of what we say. And I will share two verses from the 3rd chapter, but our affirmation of faith will be a reading of verses 5 through 10 from Eugene Peterson's translation in the Message of that passage of Scripture. But now I'd like to share with you from Proverbs 18, 20, and 21, and then James 3, 5 through 6. So I invite you to listen. Listen for the word of God to you. From the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled. With the harvest of their lips, they are satisfied. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And now from James, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. And we have a lot of evidence in California now of that damage that is done, but also in the Great Smoky Mountains. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Friends, this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And one of the biggest milestones in our society is the 16th birthday. Because on your 16th birthday, you get freedom. Well, you get freedom through the possibility of being able to drive. I was so excited for an entire year before my 16th birthday. I would go out and just sit in the car and pretend to drive, because they didn't really want me driving around in Memphis with them, so I just pretended that I would drive. But, you know, they just don't let anybody drive. They make you take this test, and you have to get a license to prove that you are competent enough to handle a vehicle. Why? Because driving is a serious matter. It is a matter of life and death. Every time you get in that car, every time you grab that steering wheel and take off, it's a matter of life and death. I have a gun. I had to get a license for that gun. I had to prove that I was competent enough to handle that weapon. I'm not sure does everybody have to have a license? Everybody should have a license if you're going to have a gun. Why? Because owning a gun is a serious thing. It's a matter of life and death. You hold that right there in your hand. So I began to think, driver's license, got to go to a DMV, you got to take a test, you get a license, you need to get a license if you want to own a gun. So I'm thinking, why don't we require people to get a license to operate their mouths? To have a Department of Motor Mouth somewhere to make sure you're competent enough to be able to operate your mouth. Why? Because it is serious stuff, the things Patricia told you about, the things that come out of your mouth. It is a matter of life and death. And really, you ought to be able to, about every 2 years, you need to go back and they need to be able to check to make sure you're still competent enough to be able to speak anything to absolutely anyone. Maybe pastors should be at the top of that list. You know who I'd put right up there next to pastors? Politicians need to be right there at the top of the list. One of the things I think we need more than anything else is to just pause for a minute and think before you speak. Oh, by the way, I preached myself, I've told you this before, more than I preach to you. I violate just about all of these things at one time or another. I know better. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how dangerous it is. And still, sometimes I don't think before I speak. And right after I say something incredibly stupid, incredibly inflammatory, incredibly hurtful, I will say a prayer and go, Lord, I am so sorry, when I should say it to the person. But that's number one. Now here is the sermon in a sentence. We have already heard it several times. You may hear it several more. I don't want you to forget this. I want you to say this one with me. Read this verse. The tongue has the power of life and death. It does. Do not doubt how powerful your words are. With your words, you can crush someone's spirit. Or with your words, you can cause someone's spirit to just absolutely soar. You can dash somebody's dreams by what you say to them with the words that come of your mouth. Or you can help to revive the dreams of someone who is feeling down, who's feeling like they're a failure. There's no point to go on. You can absolutely make somebody angry and resentful and bitter by what you say to them. Or you can inspire them. You can help them to feel joy and love and peace. You can make somebody afraid by what you say to them. Or you can make somebody feel secure in that which you say to them. It all depends on how you approach every encounter you have from this moment on. And I will suggest something in a second. And you will have several encounters where all of this will be tested, and you're going to wish you had a license, or you're going to wish you hadn't said anything. Here is Proverbs 29:20. Do you see someone who speaks in haste? There is more hope for a fool than for them. Maybe we should pause for just a second. I love this quote. I found a couple of quotes when I was surfing the internet trying to find images to put on the screen. I love this one. Blessed is the person who, having nothing to say, abstains from giving wordy evidence of that fact. Yeah, I've been that person from time to time. But this one, this acrostic, I like this. Kind of keep this in your mind. Think before you speak. T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? K, is it kind? Remember this quote that I've shared with you before from Rick Warren, and I love it because it sticks in my mind. Hurt people hurt people. Healthy people help people. I like that. When somebody spews something out, angry, bitter, resentful, when they are being hateful, they're hurting. I mean, and sometimes they need a place to vent it. Sometimes they vent it on you. They vent it on innocent people. They will vent it on a car that just pulls out in front of them. They'll vent it on a waiter or a waitress. They'll vent it, well, you kind of get the picture. They will just, because something is wrong in their life that they're not dealing with. And so they lash out. But healthy people help people. And you can see those who are hurting and those who are truly healthy and feeling good about their life and the things that are going on. And before you say anything, pray. Remember Nehemiah? Well, let me remind you of Nehemiah. He was in captivity. He was in exile. He was an Israelite, but he couldn't get there. He found out that Jerusalem was in ruins, and he was devastated. He was in pain. He was in mourning, sorrow, and the king could see that something was wrong. And you would think, okay, that's a positive thing. The king sees that he is in pain, that he is sad, that he is sorry, so maybe he will help Nehemiah feel better. Well, no. Back then, it was a capital offense to show sorrow in the presence of the king. I guess the king just wanted good news. You don't want bad news. You just want to feel good. You don't want to feel sad. So if you make the king feel sad, mad, or bad, you could be executed. So here is just a brief section of a conversation between the two. The king said to Nehemiah, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven. Before he said anything else, and that's what I want you to remember. He prayed to the God of heaven. Why? It was a life or death situation, literally, for him. If he said the wrong thing, he could be executed. He could die. This week, if you're in conflict with someone, I want you, before you say anything, before you approach the person, I want you to pray. Just stop and pray. If you have an important decision to make, an incredibly difficult decision to make, before you make that decision, pause and pray. Think about what you're going to do. And when I say pause and pray, I don't mean close your eyes, bow your head, and fold your hands. You know what I mean, right? You lift your thoughts to God. And one of the things he may say to you, he has said this to me many times, and occasionally I actually do this. Don't say anything. Right now is not the time. Later you may want to say something. Now is not the time to say anything. You're going to say the wrong thing. I'm not going to tell you that part. Sometimes that is the best thing. My mother used to say this to me. Did your parents ever say this to you? If you can't think of anything good to say it, just don't say anything. Boy, I wish I would take that advice. I know people like that. So do you. There are not many of them around, and they are treasures. Remember, people will say, and this will happen at funerals, I never heard them say anything bad about anybody else. Well, you know they had to think bad thoughts about other people. They couldn't just like everybody, but they don't say it. They don't share it. And I think there are many times we just shouldn't share it. And I will share some of those with you in just a second. But Proverbs 17:28 says this, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. So just don't say anything. This was something that David Hubbard wrote. He was president of Fuller Seminary for a long time. When he said, when he is considering putting somebody on his leadership team, there are several questions that he asks. And when they're in conversation with someone, here are the questions he asks. Do they wait their turn when talking to somebody? Do they step on the lines of others? Do they interrupt? Do they have a need for the last word? Have you ever been around somebody like that? No matter what you say, they got to say something back, so you give up and quit. Do they try to top everyone else's story? Do they sound off in their areas of incompetence? Can they say, I don't know? I got tickled at this one because he, president of a seminary. Well, when I was at Memphis, when you're in a seminary, a graduate school of theology, you're surrounded, everybody there has a doctorate. Everybody there has an advanced degree. And if you have a PhD, you are arguably an expert in that field. What I would get tickled by, frustrated by, upset by, there were certain people who thought they were not only an expert in their field, they're an expert in your field. They're an expert in everybody else's field. And they're going to tell you how to run the seminary, how to run everything. They didn't believe that, can you say, I don't know? No, they had to believe they knew absolutely everything. Actually, there was one that I think probably did. But most people are not knowledgeable in every area. I am knowledgeable in a couple, but there are some I'll be really quick to call Don, because in the area of property and physical building, I am clueless. You don't really want me trying to fix anything in this church, because it would only create more problems. But that's he calls these people with these and other verbal liabilities do not usually make it to my team. They are not sensitive enough. They are not modest enough. They waste time. They hurt feelings. They shatter morale. That last part, they hurt feelings. They shatter morale. How many people do you want on your team who you're around all the time who are constantly pulling people down instead of building them up, who is constantly ripping the rug out from people and lowering morale? You don't want them as a part of your team. There are times when you need to get into constructive criticism, but I probably won't talk about that today. But is this a pattern in their lives? If so, is it a pattern in yours? If so, what do you think you might need to do about it? Because I'll do all of these things at one time or another. We have to kind of monitor our mouths, to be careful what we're doing. This proverb, 26:17, another visual image. I love visual images. Like one who grabs a stray dog by the ears is someone who rushes into a quarrel not their own. Have you ever been around a stray dog? Have you ever thought about just going up and petting them? My daughter Deanne, she loves dogs. I mean, she cannot see a stray dog and not take it in. Yep, she goes right up to them. I guarantee you she does not grab them by the ears. If you grab a stray dog by the ears, I mean, you're asking for trouble, right? Okay, it was worse back then. We think of dogs as domesticated. They're man's, people's best friend. They're sweet, they're loving, they're adorable. Well, back then, a stray dog was a wild animal. It was like a wolf. Even approaching one would be a problem. And it would be insane to grab one of those. Would you grab a wolf by the ears? No, because you know what's going to happen. Have you seen two people get into a quarrel and there's a third person? It's not their fight. It's not their quarrel. They jump right in. They think it's their job to fix it. Their job to kind of handle it for them. What this is saying is, it's not your job to fix everything or everybody. If you don't have a dog in that fight, don't get into the fight unless you're invited in. If somebody on the outside said, well, what would you do? But again, there, the advice is you don't take sides. You take sides, you're going to make somebody mad. And they could stay mad. You may make both people mad. The best thing to do is y'all need to work this out between the two of you. You don't need to try to fix everything. And I think pastors are bad about that too. We think we can probably just try to fix everything. Another thing God, I am absolutely convinced, says to every one of us, do not gossip. Now, I have shared this with you before. Why shouldn't you gossip? Why would God not like that? Gossip is a sin. Why? Words have the power of life and death. Gossip, and we know what it does. I mean, we watch it every day. It destroys reputations. It hurts people. It tears people down. It just absolutely, and we categorize sins. See, gossip is an okay sin, and we all participate in it. I do. And I know better. But I try not to pass on really bad gossip, really bad things. But we will say, that's an okay sin. It's not okay. And I started to list the things that we think are horrible sins. And I went, no, I'm not going to do that. I think you can figure that one out. It's just as bad to God because you're hurting His children. And we know, remember I've said, how do you feel when somebody hurts one of your children or one of your grandchildren? Well, that's how God feels. And you start spreading these things. Now, what gossip does, I found this when I was searching the internet. You find incredible things on the internet. Gossip is the devil's radio, so don't be his DJ. I just think I don't like using his name, but I just think that's kind of appropriate. I really do. Gossip feeds something dark inside us. Why do we enjoy it so much? I don't know. A psychologist, psychiatrist could tell us, well, it makes us feel better to put somebody else down. And it's just, sometimes it can be, and I'll mention this in just a second, it can be true, but you just don't need to share it. It's, they're doing these terrible, horrible, rotten things. Makes us feel like we're a little more holy, a little better. We're not as bad as, and all of a sudden it kind of lifts our spirits. Well, this is what Proverbs 18:8 says. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. Oh, they just taste so good. And isn't it fun to share it? They go down to the innermost parts. Yeah, and they can make you sick if you're not careful. So what is gossip? I'll just give you a couple of things. It's a lot of things. Gossip is passing on unfounded rumors. I'll tell you, the tabloids are full of those. I mean, they just, and some of them are so outlandish, you wonder how people could believe it. But they pass it on. Some people do. They will believe, well, if it's printed, it must be true. Well, obviously, that's not true. So if you don't know if it's true or not, don't. But even if it is true, it is saying things that are true, but to the wrong person, at the wrong time. Sometimes we just don't need to speak. In the wrong way. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Always speak the truth in love. And with the wrong spirit. Isn't it a spirit to help? Remember the acrostic, think. Is it kind? Is it inspiring? Is it helpful? Even if it's true, is it all of those other things? Remember I talked to you, I think, once before about triangulation? Where you have these two people, this person has a problem with this person, but instead of going and talking to that person about it, they talk to another person, and that person talks to another person, and that person talks to about 12 other people, and it kind of gets back to the first person, but it's not what they said. And you know how that works too. We've all played that game before. And it makes it sound so much worse or completely different than what was said. And this person gets really mad at that person, but doesn't go talk to him about it, talks to somebody else about it, who talks to somebody else about it. Well, okay, that is saying it to the wrong person. Who do you need to be speaking to? Here comes the two-way test. Before you say something, would I want someone to say this about me? It's a golden rule. You know, do unto others as we talked about, as you would have them do unto you. Do you want somebody saying, if you wouldn't want somebody, if you want to gossip about me, if it's positive, you go ahead. You have my permission. If you're going to tell everybody it can be a lie, that I'm a great preacher, then you go right ahead. I will like it. Otherwise, if you think I'm a lousy preacher, you probably need to come talk to me first. Then you can tell other people. No, I'm serious. Before you say anything negative about somebody else, you go talk to that person first. And you may be able to clear up a lot of things. But then once you do that, then I think you have permission to share it with another person. But you got to try to work it out with the primary person first. You don't, unless that third person, this just occurred to me as a professional counselor. If you're really having a major problem, that is the best place to go. Don't get advice from your best friend who may not have a clue what to do. But would you want somebody to say that about you? Would you say it if that person was present? And if you can't answer that second question, don't say it. But I still like the first one better. And now, quickly, briefly, the tree of life. Now, the tree of life is found in two books of the Bible, the first and the last. It's found in Genesis. Tree of life gave life to Adam and Eve and us. That's the tree of life. Well, it's mentioned again in Revelation. And in Revelation, it transforms the image. And it's a wonderful transformation because then it is applied to the cross that Christ died on. That is the tree of life. And a vehicle of death was transformed into a vehicle of life. And that is what is being suggested with whatever comes out of your mouth. Yes, it can be destructive, it can be harmful, it can be hurtful, it can be deadly, or it can be a tree of life. And it depends on how you choose to use it. And this is Proverbs 15:4. The soothing tongue is a tree of life. You can breathe life into the lives of other people by what you say and how you relate to them. But a perverse tongue crushes the spirit, or you can absolutely kill them. And we have had this just popped into my mind, and the way I preach, that's a dangerous thing. But we have had lately where this one girl was convicted for what she said that caused another person to go through with taking his own life. Do you remember that one? And committing suicide. Well, there's been another one since then, hasn't there? Their words have the power of life. You can encourage somebody, no, you have something to live for. You are, and then you find, don't lie to them. You tell them whatever is true, but you can encourage them. You can give them hope, or you can encourage them in a way that they will go down the wrong path and they can kill themselves. So what is the tree of life? It is saying the right word at the right time to the right person with the right spirit. Now I'm going to invite you to stand and we're going to read from James 3 verses 5 through 10. So would you stand as we affirm our faith together? And this talks about the destructive power of words. So read this with me. A word out of your mouth may seem or destroy it. It only takes a spark, remember, to set off a forest fire. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony to chaos, throw mud on a reputation, send the whole world up in smoke, and go up in smoke with it. Smoke right from the pit of hell. This is scary. You can tame a tiger, but you can't tame a tongue. It has never been done. The tongue runs wild, a wanton killer. With our tongues, we bless God our Father. With the same tongues, we curse the very men and women He made in His image. Curses and blessings out of the same mouth. My friends, this can't go on.